Good evening and welcome to an all-new season of Blue Mondays. Blue Mondays is where we take a look at local, state, and national news through a progressive perspective. On this week's show, we have a great interview with Thomas Sammons, director of the Community Design Workshop School of Architecture and Design. That's a big old title, but he's going to sit down and discuss with Barbara Connor the projects and teams that he's working on to help make Louisiana and our area here a much better place to live and stay. It's quite interesting, all of the different projects that they are currently working on, and it's quite exciting to see all of the prospects that we have for our future. So you definitely don't want to miss that interview. But first, as always, this week in the news. Democrats now in charge in the first 100 hours, continuing on our segment that we started last week, half down and half more to go. In the House, they have successfully passed the Fair Minimum Wage Act, raising minimum wage to $7.25 an hour over 2 years, to fully implement the 9/11 Commission recommendations, and to start draining the swamp that has, by enacting tougher ethics legislation and standards, and passing the Stem Cell Research Enhancement Act. No doubt there is more work to go with the student loans, Medicare Part D, but we're well on our way. For more information, there's a link on our website in our show notes about this so that you can actually check the votes that have happened since we've recorded this show. That'll hopefully be helpful for you. Congressman Boustany is failing us, and failing us miserably. Congressman Boustany continues to vote against the interest and the wishes of the people of his district. Boustany voted against increasing the minimum wage, which is no surprise since he wants to repeal the minimum wage. He thinks it's okay for people to be paid $1 an hour to work here. He thinks that's quite all right, because after all, they can just go ahead and get another job. If you don't like working minimum wage, just go ahead and get another job. Yeah, that's right. He voted against implementation of the 9/11 Commission recommendations. He voted against the stem cell research bill. And interestingly enough, he voted against the pay-as-you-go fiscal responsibility rules that are going to be in place for this Congress. This seems completely and totally unbelievable to me that a so-called fiscal conservative would vote against making sure that we have to balance the budget every single year. It's unbelievable to me that he is voting this way. But it all just goes to show you who's paying his bills, and that is definitely the corporate interest. It sure isn't his constituents in his district. Boustany is not only in the minority of the votes cast, but he's also going against the majority in his own district and those in our congressional delegation up in Washington. We'll show you all these votes here in just a few minutes. How can he vote against balancing the budget? I'm still never going to be able to believe that. How can he maintain his positions on minimum wage when Louisiana ranks at the bottom of the pay scale for workers? That's nurses, that's fast food employees, that's grocery clerks. All of these individuals rank at the lowest possible level in the United States. We are almost dead last in all of these categories, and Boustany still thinks that minimum wage should not only not be increased, but he thinks it should be repealed. Unbelievable. All the while, mind you, he's working for the huge tax breaks for his fellow multimillionaires and student loan forgiveness, not for average students, mind you, only for cardiothoracic surgeons. Unbelievable. We urge you to reach out to his office and express your views to his office on these recent votes and let him know that you are definitely not happy with him. Here's how the rest of the congressional delegation for Louisiana has voted on these issues. Voting for the minimum wage increase were Charlie Melanson, Bill Jefferson, Alexander from Monroe, and Bobby Jindal. Unbelievable that they all voted for the minimum wage increase. Voting against the minimum wage increase, Charles Boustany, Baker from Baton Rouge, and McCreary from Shreveport. Voting for the implementation of the 9/11 Commission recommendations were 5 of the 7. That's Melanson, Jefferson, Alexander, Jindal, and McCreary. However, going against the stream of bipartisanship and actually almost the majority of the Republicans, going against them were Bustani and Baker. They actually voted against the implementation of the 9/11 Commission recommendations. They think that it's quite okay to have all of our ports wide open, anything coming in willy-nilly. Unbelievable. Voting for the ballot's budget was Melanson, Jefferson, and Jindal, which is quite interesting. Voting against balancing the budget, of course, was Bustani, Alexander, Baker, and McCreary. They think that it's okay to just be spending our children and our grandchildren's money willy-nilly with no checks and balances. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Bustani was even in the minority of the entire Louisiana delegation on two of these very important issues. That is the 9/11 report and the minimum wage increase. Unbelievable. How can Republicans claim to be the party of fiscal responsibility when they don't even support balancing the budget? Something as simple as that. I mean, we know that in balancing our checkbook, that we can't go out and spend more than we have. But no, not in Bustani's eyes. Oh, we'll just go ahead and pay it. I mean, he's been rich the majority of his life, well, all of his life, so he doesn't know what it's like to actually have to live with inside of a budget. It's quite discouraging, to say the least. President Bush escalates the war in Iraq. We saw it live on TV just this past Wednesday. President Bush is going against the wishes of the American people, of that of the generals on the ground that he so often uses as plot points along this sad, sad play that is playing out in front of us. And he's going against what the troops want by announcing that he will be sending in at least an additional 20,000 troops into Iraq. It should be noted that Afghanistan is falling apart, but the president is going to be pulling troops out of Afghanistan to send them into the civil war over in Iraq. Are you kidding me, Mr. President? This seems completely and totally unbelievable. If you would have told me this a year ago, I would have not have believed it. But now we are looking at pulling troops out of Afghanistan. You know, the place where Osama bin Laden is probably still living right now. The one that we still have not captured. The one who blew up our buildings and killed over 3,000 Americans. Still has not been captured. We have taken the eye off the ball. They are running amok over there. The Taliban is now taking back control of Afghanistan. But we are going to go ahead and send more of our kids over into Iraq to, I guess, referee the civil war that's going on. Unbelievable. It seems Fox's Brit Hume is even falling off the reservation, coming out against Bush. Take a look at this clip.
Thank you, and good night.
And so President Bush, in an address lasting just over 20 minutes, has outlined the new approach he will take toward the conflict in Iraq. It is probably past the point now where it makes much difference politically whether the president delivers his speech in a scintillating way or whether it's a particularly well-written speech or not a particularly well-written speech. What matters, it seems to me, is likely to prove to be the plan itself and its likelihood of success.
Even recent articles in the Daily Advertiser questions whether our own 256th will be called back up to meet the needs of this escalation over in Iraq. Again, it is quite possible, even though the 256 has returned and was not scheduled to go back for at least another 3 years, it looks like they could actually be called up. They are reporting, though, that right now it's business as usual and that we have not received any official word that they will have to go back into the theater to fight over there. You know, we really need to stop this madness. It's unbelievable. Keith Oberman takes a look at the president's track record and whether we should believe him or not. Take a look at this clip.
President Bush makes no secret of his distaste for looking backward, for assessing past results. But in our third story on the countdown tonight, and in his speech upcoming at the top of the hour, that will not be possible. Any meaningful assessment of the president's next step in Iraq must consider his steps and missteps so far. So let's look at the record. Before Mr. Bush was elected, he said he was no nation builder. Nation building was wrong for America. Now he says it is vital for America. He said he would never have put U.S. troops under foreign control. Today, U.S. troops observe Iraqi restrictions. He told us about WMDs, mobile labs, secret sources, aluminum tubing, yellow cake. He has told us the war is necessary because Saddam was a threat, because of 9/11, because of Osama bin Laden, al-Qaeda, because of terrorism in general, to liberate Iraq, to spread freedom, to spread democracy, to keep the oil out of the hands of potentially terrorist-controlled states, because this was a guy who tried to kill his dad. In pushing for and prosecuting this war, he passed on chances to get Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, Muqtada al-Sadr, Osama bin Laden. He sent in fewer troops than recommended. He disbanded the Iraqi army and de-Baathified the government. He shortchanged Iraqi training. He did not plan for widespread looting nor the explosion of sectarian violence. He sent in troops without life-saving equipment, gave jobs to foreign contractors and not the Iraqis, staffed U.S. positions in Iraq based on partisanship, not professional experience. We learned that America had prevailed, mission accomplished, the resistance was in its last throes. He has said that more troops were not necessary and more troops are necessary, and that it's up to the generals, and then removed some of the generals who said more troops would be necessary. He told us of turning points, the fall of Baghdad, the death of Uday and Qusay, the capture of Saddam, a provisional government, the trial of Saddam, a charter, a constitution, an Iraqi government, elections, purple fingers, a new government, the death of Saddam. We would be greeted as liberators with flowers. As they stood up, we would stand down. We would stay the course. We would never stay the course. The enemy was al-Qaeda, was foreigners, was terrorists, was Baathists. The war would pay for itself. It would cost $1.7 billion, $100 billion, $400 billion, $500 billion. And after all of that, today it is his credibility versus that of generals, diplomats, allies, Republicans, Democrats, the Iraq Study Group, past presidents, voters last November, and the majority of the American people.
Again, Keith Olbermann hits the nail on the head. You know, it's time to act, people. We have to stand up and fight this. You know, if you remember back, for those of you who are actually, you know, in the older generations, you know, people took to the streets and said no more in Vietnam. When are we going to reach that point? When are we going to stand up and say, you know, after all, we have troops coming in by the thousands now that have been maimed. They have lost limbs over in this foreign country, and there is still no plan to take care of the problem over there. Instead, we're just going to throw more of our sons and daughters over there to fight without having any type of plan. It's unbelievable to me. And then our troops are going to have to be answering to the Iraqi government. Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. It's time to act. We need to send a very clear message to our leaders that this is not going to be put up with. We have got to put our foot down and say no more, Mr. President. Local news. Durrell seems to be getting a sweet deal over there in River Ranch. As reported in this week's The Times of Acadiana, Mayor President Joey Durrell seems to have gotten a sweetheart deal from the developers at River Ranch. It seems that he now has a special driveway to give him access into all of his friends over at River Ranch. You know, this seems to be quite unbelievable. The Times' Jan Reischer takes a look into this matter fully, and there are definite questions as to whether Durrell has actually broken serious ethic rules on the receipt of this sweetheart deal. You'll definitely want to take a look at this article that appears in the Times. It's also available on their website, and there is a link directly to it inside our show notes at LafayetteDemocrats.org. More and more ethics problems for Republicans, and it's hitting home now. In the clip of the week, Jon Stewart takes a look at the president's speech and answers the question, is this a sign of greatness? Is he actually like Abraham Lincoln? Take a look at the clip of the week.
Or is it a sign of greatness?
He's done what Abraham Lincoln did. When your commanders are not winning, you bring in new commanders.
I'm reminded of Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War. He was firing people left and right until he got the people he wanted to do what he wanted.
Really? Is that all it takes to be like Lincoln, firing people left and right? Because that means you know who else is like Lincoln. You're fired. I'm joined now by senior comparative presidential historian John Oliver. John, thanks for joining us. Bush and Lincoln. clearly, the pundits are trying to make that comparison. Is this a fair comparison?
It's not a comparison at all, John. It's an opening bid. The first salvo by the president in the negotiation over where he'll rank among his predecessors. Obviously, he's starting high. He knows he's not going to get Lincoln. It's just part of the game. Bush opens with Lincoln. America comes back with Harding. Now, Bush says, Harding, you're killing me here. I'm at least Eisenhower. America says, I'm sorry, we can't go any higher than Hoover. And so on and so forth, until we all settle on something in the low Van Buren range.
But, John, are there in actuality any similarities historically between Bush and Lincoln?
Well, there are some, John. Both men presided over civil wars, one ours and historically inevitable, one someone else's and ridiculously evitable. Both men suspended the writ of habeas corpus, although Lincoln did mention it publicly. And, of course, both weren't afraid of the grand gesture. We all remember Lincoln on the deck of the USS Monitor hailing the end of Civil War combat operations 3 years before the South actually surrendered. Listen to this rare wax cylinder recording from 1858.
A house divided cannot, if you divide a house, you can't stand in a divided house.
Great work, John. To all of you over there at The Daily Show, you know, interestingly, more people are getting their news from programs like yours, and we greatly appreciate you providing all of this valuable information. And that is your progressive news for January 15th, 2007. We would like to thank you for tuning in here on Blue Mondays. Blue Mondays is on each and every Monday night at 9 p.m. And it has repeats of the show throughout the week. You'll check our website and see the different times that this program will be re-aired in its entirety. We also would like to have you check out the Daily Advertiser on Tuesday mornings, where you will get a brand new column for me called The Left Blog. There I'll take a look at the different happenings and goings on, both locally, on the statewide level, and nationally. And don't want to forget, Democracy Now! Appears on AOC Channel 16 every single weekday at 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. We hope you'll tune in there for a lot of great in-depth reporting from Amy Goodman. And also, we'll want to remind you to check out LafayetteDemocrats.org. There on the Lafayette Democrats website, you'll be able to check into a lot of different information. We have a calendar, news, a blog, and a lot of great information on what's going on, especially in this new season of elections that are coming up, with all of the statewide officials up for re-election, including our city parish council. And with that, we'll be right back.
This week in history. A political cartoon for the first time symbolizes the United States Democratic Party with a donkey. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, the first Greek letter organization by and for black college women, is established. The world's largest office building, the Pentagon, is dedicated. In the first ever Super Bowl, the Green Bay Packers defeat the Kansas City Chiefs 35-10. Happy Days premieres on ABC. The UN Security Council unanimously establishes an arms embargo and the freezing of assets of Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, and the remaining members of the Taliban. Space Shuttle Columbia takes off for mission STS-107, which will be its final one. Columbia disintegrates 16 days later on re-entry. The United States pays Denmark $25 million for the Virgin Islands. Convicted murderer Gary Gilmore is executed by a firing squad in Utah, ending a 10-year moratorium on the death penalty in the United States. The Jeffersons debut on CBS. For the first time, Martin Luther King Jr. holiday is officially observed in all 50 United States. John Marshall is appointed the Chief Justice of the United States. Franklin D. Roosevelt is inaugurated for the second term as the President of the United States. This is the first inauguration scheduled on January 20th, following adoption of the 20th Amendment. Previous inaugurations were scheduled on March 4th. Newt Gingrich becomes the first leader of the United States House of Representatives to be internally disciplined for ethical misconduct. Celebrating birthdays this week, Senator Robert Byrd, Ronnie Milsap, Laura Schlesinger, Debbie Allen, Betty White, Eartha Kitt, James Earl Jones, Muhammad Ali, Jim Carrey, Kid Rock, Tippi Hedren, Dolly Parton, Shawn Wayne, Buzz Aldrin, Bill Maher, Jack Nicklaus, Gina Davis. This has been a look back at history for January 15, 2007.
Global warming. Some say irreversible consequences are 30 years away. 30 years? That won't affect me.
In the last century, Americans organized as our nation moved from a farm past to a factory present. Faced with gaping wealth disparities, corruption of our political process, destruction of nature, and a workforce unprepared for a changing economy, these leaders formed a new vision for democracy. Today we again see the dawn of a new era, from an assembly line past to an interconnected information future. And we must again rebuild our democratic community. One that stands for a world-class education, an economy that is both healthy and fair, a thriving natural environment, healthy people with accessible health care, a secure nation with international credibility, and working elections and engaged citizens that make all of this possible. Not bigger government, not smaller government, but better government. Not left, not right, but forward. The Democratic Party. America's party.